The mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and family members of those who have died at the hands of our jail system or in our jail system in West Virginia need and deserve answers. The people of West Virginia cannot be left in the dark, and we cannot allow our elected leaders to continue to ignore what is unfolding right in front of them. That is why today we are having this press conference and a subsequent rally in Charleston on March the 10th, and also a rally that one of the families will talk about coming up this Saturday. We will not relent in this matter until answers are given and found. We're doing this on behalf of the 13 people who have died senselessly, we believe, this year at the Southern Regional Jail in Beckley, and on behalf of over 100 more who have died within West Virginia regional jails in the last decade. This is a serious matter. Poverty, nor a prison sentence, should not be a death sentence. Countless low-income West Virginians of all races, Black and white, and others have died under the watch of the state prison jail system. In West Virginia, 40% of residents are poor and low income, over 700,000 people. This includes over 100,000 children, over 400,000 women, over 30,000 African Americans, over 13,000 Latinos, and over 600,000 white people. And here we are. Since 1983, the number of incarcerated locals has increased by 235%, well into the thousand. And our state has a rate of 731 incarcerated people per 100,000 citizens. These are facts. And for years, the Southern Regional Jail System has been notoriously plagued by chronic understaffing, overcrowding, neglect, and other harsh conditions. Since 2018, it has been, as I said, seen a 13-fold increase. Since 2018, a 13-fold increase in deaths. But these issues are not unique to one bad actor. In the last decade, over 100 people of all races have died in our state jails. Many of them passed within the first 24 hours or just a few days after their arrival, and families are yet to have answers and closures. We were alerted to this situation by Sister Pam and Brother Stewart, who are part of the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign, part of the Tri-Chair leadership. And they will come and speak for a moment to the press about why they felt the need to contact us at the National Poor People's Campaign, National Call for Moral Revival, why they called in Repairs of the Breach in Kairos, and why they were contacted by families. After they take about a minute and a half to lay down why, we will interview two families and spokespersons from that family. I will actually walk them through and help them walk through these stories so that the media, you can graphically understand the level of desperation and deep concern. Following that, Reverend Lee Theo Harris, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, will take a minute to respond to what has been said. And then we have a major announcement of our call for the National U.S. Justice Department a letter that we're releasing today to be involved, to do an investigation federally, and a call for the governor and for the senior senator from West Virginia, Manchin, to meet with these families, meet with the Poor People's Campaign, and to join this call for a full federal investigation. And lastly, an action item where we are inviting people from all over the country to join in signing off, demanding answers to all of these deaths that are occurring while people are under the care, while people are incarcerated. And the families have not had any shame, or any family member maybe being stopped for a DUI, but then ending up dead. And the stories go on and on and on. Poverty and an arrest or even a sentence is not a death sentence. And we are going to demand that all persons, as our Constitution says, have equal protection under the law. It doesn't say some persons. It doesn't say only persons who never had a run-in with the law. It doesn't say only Black people, white people. It says all persons. It doesn't even say you have to be a citizen. If you are inside of the boundaries of the United States, our Constitution demands equal protection under the law for all persons. So, Ms. Pam Garrison, I want to ask you if you first would lay out why you all have been following this, and you made the call, and then Brother Stewart, and then we're going to talk to these two families. And after we do this, the members of the media, we will also be taking questions, and we have people on the line from all over the country viewing this virtual press conference. Pam?
Thank you, Reverend Barber. And I'd like to thank everybody for being here and for the families for speaking up. We've been following this for quite a while here in West Virginia, and it's got to the point where it's a crisis. We're beyond a problem, Reverend Barber. We're to the crisis point. A lot of these laws are made against the poor people that are in poverty. They're disproportionately portioned against the poor people in West Virginia. I want you to know that half the people that are in prison, are in jail right now, are waiting to go to trial. They've never even been to trial. They're waiting months and almost years just to go to trial. A lot of these are just misdemeanors, Reverend Barber. These people are dying over misdemeanors. There's so many layers of bureaucracy that they've done hid this crisis under, that people, when they get us into the systems and we become property, we don't have any rights no more. The families don't have no rights to know how our people are. They can't get medical help. A lot of these are dying because they need medical help and can't get it. We've had hundreds of millions of dollars to come into West Virginia over an opioid crisis. And and all they do is just keep, their answer to everything is just lock people up and just lock them up and lock them up and lock them up longer, to the point where our jails are busting at the seams, where they're made for like 450 inmates. Like you said, over 700, the water systems can't keep up. This whole systems is breaking. And we keep getting the same old run around. It's under investigation. It's under investigation. Well, we're tired of investigation. We want answers. We want solutions. And people shouldn't die over a traffic ticket. I'm scared to death my daughter will get a speeding ticket and get put in Southern Regional because she can't pay the fine. I know she'll be dead. It's to that point, Reverend Barber. And so we're standing up. We've had enough. The families are standing up. People in West Virginia, we've had enough. Right. We want to change, and we want it from the top down, because that's where it's at. This is from every department, from the top down. Our locals are busting at the seams, our budgets and everything, trying to keep locking people up and lock them up for longer and longer. We can't be silent anymore, people. Stand with us, stand up.
That's right.
Thank you, Reverend Barber.
And Pam, this is classic, that we need to make sure we say to the media that this problem with our criminal justice system, injustice system, this problem with jailing and police brutality and all of these things is not just an issue that affects Black people. What we're seeing in West Virginia is how poor people of all races are being caught up in a system. And as you said, going in for one thing and ending up dead, and some in less than 24 hours, which we'll get to in a minute. But it doesn't matter if it's 24 hours or 24 days. This should not be going on. And we must have a full, independent, federal investigation of what's happening here in West Virginia. Stuart, let them know who you are and share with us why this is such a pressing issue when you contact us. You're on mute, Stuart. Just take it off mute.
I'm sorry. My name's Stuart Acuff. I live in Jefferson County, West Virginia. Thank you, Bishop Barber, for stepping in with us. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Liz, for stepping in with us. We are ashamed in West Virginia that people of our state are subjected to such harsh and inhumane conditions as they are in the jails. I know the regional jail here in the Eastern Panhandle in Martinsburg has been between a third and a half over capacity for at least 4 years. We know that a lot of people are in jail because of an opioid crisis visited on us by the twin evils of big pharma and the dangers of coal mining. We know that big pharma saw West Virginia as an opportunity to make a ton of money off our pain. And consequently, we have a lot of our people who became addicted to opioids and heroin. And that is who is a lot of the people in jail. It's a tragedy beyond anything I've ever been this close to think that people die of neglect and physical assault in our jails, and their families can't even get basic questions answered. It's a denial of dignity. It's a denial of human dignity. And it is a denial of our teaching that we are all created in the image of a loving God. We cannot stand for this here in West Virginia. There's lots of people of goodwill and good faith in this state, and we're not going to stand with it for it. But we need the power, the moral suasion, and the vision of the National Poor People's Campaign. And that's why we're so grateful. And we're so grateful for these families.
That's right.
Who stood for their loved ones for the whole time and are still standing and will not be turned away. We love you, folks. We're going to be with you every step of the way. And on March 10th, we're coming to Charleston with a message for Jim Justice and Joe Manchin. The corruption has gone too far. The corruption is taking lives, and we intend to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We have to stop it. This, especially in these places, we're all from the South claiming the Bible Belt, but justice and love are the fundamentals of our great biblical and faith traditions. And there's nothing there's no justice and love in what you're going to hear in these stories now. I want to talk first to the mother of Quintez Burke, Miss Kim Burke, and also to Quintez's fiance. Because of this death, they were not able to complete their commitment to be married. Mother Burke, I really would rather not be doing this, but I admire you being willing to tell your story to the world, because what we know in this situation is that we can't just deal with the wrongs of our criminal justice and jail systems only when we get something on camera. But what's happening behind the camera. So tell us first about Quintez Burke. Who was he? How old was he?
Quintez was 37 years old when he passed away on March the 1st, 2022. My son was never a troubled person, even as a kid growing up.
Hold on 1 second, we got an echo. Can we fix that in the tech, you all?
We're fixing it.
Okay.
Is that better?
It's still an echo.
Is that better?
I think you need to tell Kim, I think you need, it's maybe two phones going on at the same time with the webinar, so one needs to be
Turned
on.
it off.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
Okay, thanks,
Mother Burke, talk to us.
Okay, so Quintez was 37 years old. Quintez was a homeowner. He was a dog breeder. Never have I ever had problems out of Quan as a kid or a teenager.
I'm so sorry, Kimberly. You might have accidentally jumped onto mute.
He did. Quan was a kind-hearted person. He has one daughter, but he's raised so many people's children from so this to me is very personal.
So he's a father. He was a fiance. He's your son. He was 30 years old. Grandfather. And also somebody who loved the people in the community. Now tell us about his encounter with the police. What happened first?
Okay. On March the 28th, the police was called on Quan, and 3 West Virginia police came out and had arrested him. When we tried to he had a bondable offense. So when we tried to bond him out,
he was arrested for. We don't have any.
He was arrested for warrant endangerment and obstruction.
That's right. But innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. But he was
exactly.
All right. Now go ahead.
So we had called that evening. They came out approximately about 2 o'clock that day.
Are we still on?
Yes, you are. Keep on.
We had they had came out at approximately about 2 o'clock on March the 28th.
All right.
We called that afternoon to get his bond. We called the magistrate's office to get his bond. They said that
the magistrate wasn't in, and for us to call back at 7.
All right.
When I called back at 7, they said he was too intoxicated to have court, so they took him straight to the SRJ.
Well, let's say what SRJ is.
Southern Regional Jail.
They took him straight to jail. You haven't been able to get in contact with him. He had a bondable offense. They said they've taken him to jail. Now, what was your next contact with?
The next contact I had with Quan was around 9 o'clock, March 1st, that morning, on my way to my class. We talked. I told him I was coming to get him, and then our conversation ended. I got home from my class.
Say your name so they'll know you're the fiance.
I'm Latasha Williams, Quintez Burke's fiance.
Thank you. And that comment, keep on.
I'm sorry, what?
Keep on with the rest of the story.
Okay, yeah. On March 1st, around 9 o'clock that morning, we talked. I told him I was coming to get him, and I finished off my class. I got back home. It was around 1. It could be before. It could be a little after. I called the magistrate to get his bond. The magistrate said I hate to tell you this. He passed away last night at 9:00 p.m. I threw my phone. I start crying. Me and his mom, we going through it. Then I stopped like they lying. It's somebody else because I just talked to him this morning.
Now,
So he
stop right
couldn't
there.
have been dead.
Stop right there. He encounters the police system on the 28th.
Yes.
They take him straight to the regional jail.
Yes.
You talk to him in the morning of March the 1st. You talk
Yes.
to him.
Yes.
By what time do you find out he's dead?
Approximately 1:00 around that area, maybe 1:15,
So less than
around that time frame.
so less than about 4 hours.
Yes.
You call. They don't call you.
I
No.
called.
You call to try to figure out things, the bond, and you are informed, not because they called you, but you are informed at that time that he's dead.
Yes.
Now, once that happened, what took place afterwards, after you all the emotions and all, but what was the next thing that happened with the judicial system?
Nothing. Everything is still in investigation.
Okay, did they where did they take his body?
First, we didn't know where they took his body. We
Okay.
had to get in contact with a funeral home director, and he located Quan's body.
So they didn't tell you where the body was. They didn't talk about any of that. You had to go get a funeral director. Then the funeral director found the body. Was he able to pick up the body?
No, the body was taken directly to the medical examiner's office in Charleston.
Right.
The funeral director did not pick up his body until it took them maybe a couple weeks to finish their autopsy. But once they finished their autopsy, we were able to pick him up.
So during this time that they took him to the medical examiner's office, I guess, to do the investigation autopsy, were they in contact with you? Did they talk to you? Did they let you know what was going on? Did you get to see him? Did you ever, were you invited to go see his body, to see your loved one?
Not at all. We never identified his body.
Wow.
When the funeral director got his body, when the funeral director got his body, he took him to Pittsburgh for the second autopsy.
Let's get
He
to that.
got his body back, then we were able to identify his body.
Well, let's get to that in a second. So 2 weeks, they have the body.
Mhm.
They do whatever investigation that they said they were going to do. Did they announce the results of their investigation?
No.
They didn't announce the results of that. So
No.
when you got the body, you had concerns. So you then went out. How did you all get a second autopsy? How did that happen? Did the state help you do that, or something? What happened?
No, they didn't. I Googled around and we found somebody. Our family decided to pick this one person that we picked out in Pittsburgh. And we got together $5,000 and sent him to get another autopsy.
And because they didn't get in touch with us, we just felt like there was probably some foul play in it.
Right.
So that's really what made us decide to get that second autopsy.
Right. But you're saying to us and to the media that you had to do that. You had to Google, you raised the money, your family had to come up with it. You received no reports of their investigation of what they had done. You had to find the person, and then you had to get the body to this second autopsy. And when did they receive the body? When did they receive your son's remains? You know, approximately.
Approximately the week of April 7th, around that time.
So he's deceased March the 1st. Now we are over 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Over 30 days. You don't know anything, am I right?
Right.
You don't have any answers, am I right?
None.
And you now have raised $5,000 and secured an independent investigator, and it's post 30 days before they even get the body. How long did they keep the body before they gave you a report?
Not even 24 hours.
Not even 24 hours. And what did they tell you in the report?
In the private autopsy report that we had, Quan was, findings were consistent with being handcuffed while being beaten. Both of his wrists were broken. He had an arm broken, nose broken, and a leg bone broken. He also had blunt force trauma to his whole body, including his head. He also had a heart attack, which they said was caused because of the stress that his body was put into.
This is and give us the name of the independent group that did the autopsy.
It's Cyril Welch in Pittsburgh.
Now, since April of last year, with this second autopsy and whatever the state did, has there been any conclusion? Has there been any charges brought? Has there been any by the state series that you know of, conclusions, full investigation of how your son, how your fiance died, and what this second autopsy has revealed?
We haven't heard anything to this day of anything that the state has done. They have not acknowledged us at all from day one.
I want the media to hear that. They've not acknowledged this family from day one.
Not at all.
And listen at the way in which this family has had to fight by themselves just to get some basic answers, which required a second autopsy, which then comes back and they have it in writing with these findings. When did you bury Quan?
April 23rd, 2022.
So the ordeal not only was all of these things, you could not give him the dignity of laying him to rest for nearly 60 days.
Right.
So
Right.
I think yesterday you all said 53 days.
Mm-hmm.
From
About
March
that
the 1st to April the 23rd, that his body was out, that his body was not laid to rest.
Right.
Let me talk to the other family. I'm gonna come back to you in just a second.
Okay.
Miss
We're going
Anna Shrewberry.
Yeah, she's over here.
Okay.
She's not wanting to. She has to sit in her chair. She gets
That's fine.
uncomfortable easily.
I understand. But Ms. Shrewberry, I want to talk to you about this case, and I want
She
the
can
media
hear
to
you.
see that here you have an African-American family, and here you have a white family, because injustice is just injustice. Whether it's race and class, it doesn't matter. Ms. Shrewberry, tell us about your loved one, your father.
Okay. My dad was actually 45 when he passed away on the 17th. His birthday was the 30th of the same month.
Give us his
He
name.
would have been 46 just a week or so after his passing. He had went into jail on August 29th for a DUI, driving on suspended.
And is
When
this
he
Miss
went into
Smith? Would you give your name?
Yeah,
We'll give
Miranda
your name.
Smith.
Yeah, you're the daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Strawberry,
Yes.
the mother, is to your is sitting there. So this is the
Right.
daughter, right? And so Miss Smith, yeah, tell us about your father. What was his name?
Alvis Shrewsbury.
And you said he was how old?
He was 45 when he passed.
I want
He
the
would have
nation.
been 46 on the 30th.
I want the nation to hear this. Now, what was his encounter with the judicial system and law enforcement?
He was pulled over for driving on suspended and DUI.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what happened then?
After he was arrested, then he was appointed a court date. When he went in on August 29th for his court hearing, they sentenced that day to 6 months in jail.
For a DUI, basically, driving with
Yes.
suspended light DUI. And then once they did the sentence, where did they sentence him to serve that time?
They sentenced him to 6 months. Once he was actually in jail, he found out he wouldn't be serving but 3 months, but it was initially on 6 months.
And which jail?
Southern Regional Jail,
The regional jail and the city. Give everybody the city. Where is that located?
West Virginia, Beaver.
Beaver. Okay. Is that the same place, Miss Burks, where your son was? I'm making a connection here. I think
Yeah,
you
it
said-
was.
Yes, it is.
So it's the same jail. All right, great. Now, what did you begin to hear from your father as you communicated with him?
He was telling us that the other inmates in there were 3 in particular that they were beating him for his food to take his tray during the meal times.
Mm. And were they and did he feel like the authorities were protecting him properly?
Absolutely not. And we actually being here and just talking to him over the phone, we would call the facility ourselves and speak to the nursing staff and tell them, he has been beaten. He's feeling weak. He's wanting food, and we understand they can't just take him extras in there, but we were supplying commissary. They only get that like once a week, no matter when you place the order, they get it on like a certain day. And then they had actually beat him and taken that from him as well, the first and only order that he ever got in the 19 days he was there.
So 19 days later, he's telling you this, you're contacting the system, asking them to protect him, asking them to take care of this man, 45 years old. And 19 days later, you get a call. What does it say?
We actually got a home visit around 2:30, 3 a.m. They came to his mother's house, my grandmother, and told her that they had taken him to Appalachian Regional Hospital, Bar H, in Beckley. And when they got him there, we were thinking, thank God he's going to get some help.
Mm-hmm.
But they said he didn't make it.
He did not.
Meaning he had already passed.
That's right. So he had already passed. You get a visit. Do they do an investigation, autopsy? Do they do?
They had told us, my brother and I, we went to Southern Regional to try to pick up his belongings the following few days after his passing, and they wouldn't let us have them, saying that they were part of evidence in the investigation. But when we have looked at the actual autopsy report where it has the investigative part, it said that there were no signs of a struggle in there when the inmates that were in there with him were actually removed from the pod that he was in due to the disaster in there, and they didn't want to clean it. The correctional officers didn't want to clean that. Mm-hmm. So they just moved the other inmates somewhere else and shut the pod down.
Did you all do an independent investigation?
No, we didn't have like someone, just us talking to who we knew. And
I'm talking about the autopsy. Did you get an autopsy?
Yeah, we had a private autopsy.
You got a private, and what did that autopsy come back and say?
Dad had already been embalmed. When they done the autopsy of ours, he only found the underlying cause that the chief medical examiner found. He didn't actually find the initial cause of death that the chief medical examiner found.
But you did he find something about bleeding? Did you find something?
The chief medical examiner of Charleston, their cause of death was his gastrointestinal bleeding. But our private autopsy had cardiomegaly as his cause of death, which was the underlying cause on the Charleston's.
But it wasn't bleeding because of cancer or something of that nature. And you also—
They did say it was a natural cause of death, but they didn't say even in the autopsy report that it was due to that.
Right. But your deep concern was these beatings and things that he was reporting to you happening, and whether or not they attributed to this bleeding and causing internal bleeding. We—
I 100% believe so.
That's right. To those in the media, these stories are beyond compelling. These are just 2 of the 13 have had people to die in the last year. And that's why today, the West Virginia Poor People's Campaign, the National Poor People's Campaign for National Call for Moral Revival, Repairs of the Breach, Kairos Center, and Forward Justice. Yesterday, actually, we released a letter to Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark, calling for immediate action by the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to investigate and remedy the dangerous, inhumane, and unconstitutional conditions in the Southern Regional Jail in Raleigh County, West Virginia, that has already resulted in the loss of 13 people's precious lives in 2022 alone. We are calling for for them to expedite and ensure the full independence of the federal civil rights investigation into these jail conditions and unconscionable numbers of death in Raleigh County Southern Regional Jail. This must be investigated. And you don't have a video, you don't have a body camera, but you have real lives and real families and tremendous pain and death and people going in for, as you've heard, not even, it wouldn't matter if they were proven guilty. Some don't even get to trial, as Pam said, for these offenses. And then family members finding out, sometimes less than 24 hours, sometimes less than 24 days, that a loved one is dead, and with all kinds of questions gone unanswered. This is why today we are calling for this full investigation of the Civil Rights Division. Let me ask Reverend Liz Theo Harris, co-chair, to respond to some of what she's heard today. And then I have one more announcement, then we'll take questions from the media.
Hearing these stories, my heart is breaking. Families of the incarcerated there in West Virginia deserve answers. This drive to criminalize the poor is immoral, and poverty and incarceration, as we have said and will continue to say, should not be a death sentence. Instead, everyone deserves life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness, equal protection under the law. How is it that we can live in a nation with an abundance of healthcare, an abundance of food, an abundance of natural resources, and yet in West Virginia have 40% of residents poor and low income? How is it that we can live in a place that's called the home of the free, and yet over the past decades, increased incarceration across the state, with the Southern Regional Jail system notoriously plagued by chronic understaffing, overcrowding, neglect, and harsh conditions? Enough is enough. This has to stop. And we are calling, as Bishop Barber said, on our elected officials and on the DOJ to make a difference. We're calling on Senator Manchin and Governor Justice to hear the cries of the families seeking answers and to do what's right. As we say in the Poor People's Campaign, somebody's been hurting our people, and it's gone on for far too long, and we cannot and will not be silent anymore.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Liz. Members of the media, you should also know that in December 2022, the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security began conducting an initial investigation into the conditions of the Southern Regional Jail, but that is not enough. We also, you should know, September 21st, 2022, nearly 1,000 former and current inmates filed a class action lawsuit against Southern Regional Jail. We need an independent federal investigation. We need it now. We need the Justice Department to come in and meet with these families. We are calling on the senior senator, Joe Manchin, and the governor to meet with Poor People's Campaign in West Virginia, these mothers, these family members, but also to support this call for an independent federal investigation. Because civil rights and protection of civil rights is not just a Black issue. Civil rights is a right that all people have equal protection under the law. And these are just two of the stories. Forward Justice, who's on the line today, I'll ask them if they want to make a quick comment. They have helped in putting together this petition to the U.S. Justice Department. And we, as Reverend Liz said, intend to be relentless and committed to this. There will be a rally with the Burke family this coming Saturday. I think it is this coming, is that right? On the 4th. And then on the 10th, there's going to be a rally in Charleston right at the state legislative house. What we will not do is allow these cases to go hidden, unheard, or unseen anymore. From the attorney from the Forward Justice, do you have a comment? Then we'll open it up for the media.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. My name is Kat Robles, and I'm an attorney with Forward Justice. We're really proud to be standing here with Poor People's Campaign, West Virginia Poor People's Campaign, Repairers, Cairo Center, but most importantly, the families of Quantez Burks and Alvis Shrewsbury. Frankly, this is an urgent crisis. This is an outrage. We're outraged on behalf of your community. As Reverend Barber said, we'll be sending out a letter to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to request that they conduct an investigation into the jail conditions, a federal civil rights investigation, including the department's authority under the Civil Rights Institutionalized Persons Act. And not just an investigation, we want them to meet with community leaders, meet with family, and to remedy this urgent crisis. Thank you all so much for having us here with you.
Lastly, we have called for an action alert for people all over West Virginia to sign on, and all over the country to sign this petition that will go to Senator Manchin and to the governor. We invite tens of thousands of you to join on signing and standing with these families. Remember, it could be your family. It could be any of our families. And these two families show it could be your family regardless of your skin color. And it's wrong. Just the fact that these families have to literally beg and run around and can't even get answers is just so offensive to what it means to just be a decent human being. The system that is treating people in this way is just immoral, and that is and shameful and unjust and wrong. So you can sign up. This action item is going out now. Ms. Burke, when is the rally and where? This on the 4th? You can come off mute for a second.
There we go.
Okay. On March the 4th, 2023, we have been planning a rally march for Quantez for 2 months. So we will be on the main highway from 12 to 2. And then we have a few other things that we're doing afterwards. In appreciation for everybody that's coming out, we will have a dinner for them all just to show our thanks.
And what city is this, so people know that are not from?
This is in Beckley, West Virginia.
I want to keep saying that city, because see, so often we have to say to the media, it's not just what goes on in the big cities where the media. That's the thing. If we're going to deal with this issue and get the kind of reforms, we have to get down into these kinds of cases in these areas where often people believe, I think, that nobody's going to pay attention to it because it's not in the big city, the big urban area. And that's why the Poor People's Campaign, we come to places like this and stand with families, regardless of their race, their color, their creed, their sexuality. We stand for what is right. In Charleston, we're planning, you'll get notice out, it'll probably be right at the State House. And we're going to invite as many people to come out, but you'll get more notice on that. Members of the media, do you have any questions for us?
I can moderate that section for you all. The first question is from Josephine Moore from the Register Herald, and she asks, a federal class action lawsuit was filed last year regarding deplorable conditions and inhumane treatment of inmates at the Southern Regional Jail. Are you hopeful that this lawsuit will bring about any change? And do you feel like the process will take too long to help or possibly save those inmates that are currently at the jail?
It is a necessary step, but it is not all that needs to be done. We are glad to see more and more people are filing these kinds of actions, but what we need is a full independent federal investigation by the U.S. Justice Department that has the authority by the Constitution and by Congress to pull resources, to change, to deal with this system, and any system that in any way gets federal money or is inside of these United States where the law requires equal protection under the law. So what we want to say is we're glad for all of the investigations in the sense we're not glad they have to happen, but we are seeing people, as Pam said, who was tired, they're sick and tired, from the inmates to others who are starting to stand up. But these families today have signed this letter because this is now we need a full federal investigation. Next question.
And our second question is from Roger Atkins from the Gazette Mail. And this is to the Burks family. They want to know, were the 2 autopsies that were done for Quantes consistent with one another? And did the West Virginia medical examiner reach the same conclusion as the one in Pittsburgh?
We haven't officially got the state's autopsy back, where they had leaked, someone inside the jail basically leaked 9 deaths and they had to cover them up. So they just said his was hypertensive cardiovascular disease, but ours showed totally something different that caused that. They're trying to make it seem as if it was natural causes, but ours showed that he was brutally beaten to death.
So the question, and it's clear to the media, the independent autopsy was diametrically different from what the state put out. And that is why they didn't believe what the state had put out. And that's why they made sure that they got an independent. And I want you to hear, this family didn't get help doing that. They had to Google and search and find and raise money even before they could lay their son and their fiance to rest. And the conclusions came back much different with an entirely different rationale for why and what had happened to this young man. Next question.
We have a couple more questions. This is to Miranda Smith from Roger as well. You mentioned that the 2 autopsies were not consistent in your father's case. What was the West Virginia medical examiner's response to that? And do you plan on legally contesting the medical examiner's findings?
Knowing what had happened with the Burks family was the biggest reason we wanted a second autopsy. We wanted no room for mistakes. We wanted them to know they were not going to be the last people to lay eyes on my dad. So we secured the second autopsy so that Charleston knew we were having another one. You know, do not mess up anything. There will be a second examination. So after speaking to the lawyer and us being on a tight deadline in order to have an open casket for Dad, we opted to go ahead and have him embalmed before our private autopsy. That had a lot of effect on the results that they found. So I do believe that they were consistent with each other, although there is a lot of, I think that a lot of the things on the chief's medical examiner's autopsy report is false, such as the falling off of the bunk bed. That didn't happen. And the fact that they will say that he had his black eye was from an old injury. As you can see here, my dad went into jail. His mugshot that they posted publicly, he has no black eye. And then later on a phone call, we take this where my dad has a black eye.
Mm-hmm.
That's very inconsistent. They say that's an old injury. Clearly, he didn't have that black eye when he went into jail. So it was not an old injury. And, you know, he may have even told them in order to just avoid the name of being a rat or a snitch on them, he may have told them he fell off the bunk bed and that's how he got his injuries. I'm not sure if that's just something the jail told the investigators or my dad told the jail.
Right. But the issue is that both of these families have lawyers. This is why they are investigating. This is why we're calling for a full federal investigation. You just saw Miss Smith put up a picture. Put it up again, Miss Smith, of her father. Before the first picture. Her father, remember, goes into jail for around some traffic issues and those kinds of things. He's given 6 months, says yes, sir, and that's him. He doesn't have any beaten, bruises, black eyes. But then one night,
time later,
and this is before he's found dead. And so we
He
know,
went in August 29th, and this photo was taken the 10th,
right, on the 10th, which was just a few days before he was reported.
September 10th.
And we
And then
have,
he passed on the 17th, a week before. This was a week before he passed.
okay. And so there's this attempt to say, well, this is just old injuries and he just died of natural cause and those kind of things. We've had too many incidents throughout history where we find out when the system polices itself, that the system protects itself. That's what all the call and the cry is about reform. That's why there must be an independent federal investigation with the agency that has full constitutional and congressional power to investigate, to charge, to correct, to remedy a situation like this, and why we are calling for and demanding that Senator Joe Manchin, the senior senator, and the governor join together in calling for this independent investigation. But even if they don't, these families are, and we're inviting people from around the state and the country to join this cry for an independent investigation through signing off on this action alert. One more question.
Okay, sounds good. So we are going to go with Mark Gruenberg from People's World. His question is, there are Southern regional jails elsewhere and not just in West Virginia. If so, what's the Poor People's Campaign next move to help solve this crisis across the nation?
Well, that is a question that what you see here in West Virginia, and in many of these cases around the country, they are just microcosms. The Poor People's Campaign has consistently stood against the prison complex, the constant way in which poor, low wealth people face in injustice and incarceration, in death, and not only in death, in brutality. A lot of times people aren't killed, but they're beaten and bruised so bad that they can't survive, that their lives are forever ruined. And so one of the things that happens with a federal investigation with the Justice Department is something called they can expand it. And the reason we chose to do this press conference nationally with people being able to join in across the country is so that if they have concerns in those jails around the country, those communities too can rise up, can call for investigations, can join with us. As we said, once an investigation starts with the Justice Department, and if they're investigating in West Virginia, they have the authority to say this is systemic, and then to open it up, and I see the lawyers shaking their head, and broaden the investigation. What West Virginia's, these families are saying is we're going to be the tip of the spear, and we're not going to let the memory of our son and our fiance, of our father and our husband to just be pushed off the scene as though their lives didn't matter and as though it is okay for you to go into jail and just die or be hurt, harmed, maimed, whatever has happened in these situations. These men, we believe, should be alive today. And we say to folk, you cannot say, well, if they hadn't had a run-in with the officer of law, the law is supposed to protect and serve, not destroy and kill. And so that's why we're opening up this federal investigation. And we don't know how far it will go, but we know that the federal government has the power and the ability to expand wherever this investigation takes them. And we certainly will endorse that as well. Wherever there is injustice in these systems, it is time for remedy. It's time for investigation. It's time for change. And as Stuart said and Pam said, what we will not do is be silent, be quiet, and be unseen. Thank you all in the sense of I'm thanking you like people thank Emmett Till's mother when they thanked her for having the courage to make sure that your loved ones' lives are honored, respected, and not just destroyed and forgotten. And I'd ask you, do you have a picture of Quan? Do y'all have one right there? And do you have a picture of your father? If you all would hold them up again so that people can see them. If you have one, please. Yeah, give them just a second. I think the one you have, Ms. Burks, a little close. There it is. There it is. Yeah, show his picture. Thank you. Not forgotten, my brother. Your families and many others are fighting. And we cannot rest until the truth is known. God bless you all. Thank you. Take care.